we've got a new Cyberpunk anime coming to us in the not-so-far future. Wait, hold on, you mean that Cyberpunk? Will Keanu Reeves be involved in any way? What studio is producing this show, and what can we expect from them? All these questions and more will be answered today, so stick around for this first look at Cyberpunk Edgerunners, coming soon to a streaming service near you. First off, is this show related to Cyberpunk 2077? Yes, indeed it is. CD Projekt Red, in all their misspelled glory, signed off on the show, making it an official anime adaptation of the hit video game based on the tabletop RPG. And wow, that was a mouthful. Part of me hopes that this anime also gets a book adaptation, just to see how far this train can go. Don't lie, you'd be curious about the book of the anime of the video game of the tabletop campaign. That means the show is very much set in the game's universe, and should feature familiar iconography. While we're only just recently seeing footage of the upcoming show, it was actually announced back in 2020, and has apparently been in the works since 2018, which to me lends a decent bit of authenticity, but they still have a ways to go to catch up to the game's 8-year development cycle. Sorry, I promise this video won't be too full of snarky snipes at the original game's release. Their name is very much attached to the project. That's project with a C, by the way, and it seems like they've been collaborating fairly closely with the anime studio in question, and that of course leads us right into our next topic. Who is the studio behind this production? Well, if you're a fan of modern anime, there's a real good chance you're familiar with the people behind this upcoming production, or at the very least, you've heard of the many shows they produced in the past, because none other than Studio Trigger are at the helm of this major adaptation, a pretty prestigious rising name in the industry. They're responsible for a number of hit anime shows of this past decade, including the action-packed Kill la Kill, the coming-of-age magical girl affair of Little Witch Academia, and the romantic mecha series Darling in the Franxx, just to name a few standouts. That's a pretty diverse lineup already, and now Cyberpunk Edgerunners is joining that list. Studio Trigger is famous for its unique visuals, which are more loose, vibrant, and Western influenced than most of their contemporaries, and with it comes a distinct visual humor as well. It should be interesting to see how this translates to a relatively gritty atmosphere when they take on Cyberpunk. On the surface, that might seem like a mismatch, but what we've seen so far is promising. The recently released teaser suggests something a bit moodier than what you might usually expect from them, and gives a good look at their interpretation of the high-tech suburbia that the cyberpunk genre is famous for. Additionally, some creative team members from both Cyberpunk 2077 and The Witcher 3 are said to be involved, and Silent Hill's Akira Yamaoka will be composing the original score to the show. That last one looks like a good sign that they're aiming for something a little darker than they usually take on, doesn't it? But does it follow the plot of the game? If you look at other notable anime adaptations of video game properties, such as with Danganronpa or Persona 5, they will often directly adapt the story of the game itself. So what about this one? Well, in the case of Cyberpunk Edgerunners, the answer is no. It's looking like it's got its own entirely separate story to tell. The protagonist is a young street kid named David Martinez from Santo Domingo, and with what little we know about him, there's reason to believe the show is actually set sometime before the events of the game, at least depending on how seriously you take in game item names. You see, while David doesn't appear in Cyberpunk 2077 himself, his name is actually featured as the name of a drink in the Afterlife bar. It's been established in the universe that in order to get a drink named after you, you've got to be a pretty legendary figure. Not that it's a huge surprise that the protagonist of an anime is going to go on to do big things, but it's pretty cool to know that the events of the show are already canonized in some small way. While we're really focusing on this little connection, the drink's flavor text, drink flavor, we're very funny around here, reads aim high and go out with a bang, which does sound a little bit anime in its own right, and will likely turn out to be a bit of foreshadowing. Does an explosive future await our hero? Will he be flung into the stars, roughly as high as one can aim? Guess we'll find out. Considering the overall different plot of the show, it probably makes you wonder about the more recognizable characters and the voices behind them. Is any of the game's cast making a return for this series? Well, unfortunately at the moment, we can't say for certain. There hasn't been a full cast list released. Actually, they're being pretty tight-lipped about it in general. The only thing we know for sure is that David Hernandez is being voiced by anime mainstay Zach Aguilera. He's most known for voicing Genos in One Punch Man, as well as being the voice for the male version of Fire Emblem's Beyblade. It seems pretty likely that voice casting is something that the Studio Trigger side of things would handle, and to be honest, it feels like it's much more of their production than CD Projekt Red's, so it stands to reason that much of the cast will be other anime veterans. That means that unless they have history in that industry themselves, any given cast member from the game is unlikely to be making an appearance on the show. But that's just speculation at the moment, and they could well surprise us. Maybe Rogue Amendiarez or Saul Bright are gonna pop up in one of the 10 episodes. But something tells me that if Keanu Reeves were involved in this project in any way, they'd probably be making a big deal out of it by now. Lord knows they could never stop talking about it in the lead up to the initial game's release, so I wouldn't be getting my hopes up for that one. But again, we'll have to wait and see because the cast list is sparse at the moment. Perhaps we'll have an update in a future video for you on that front. Stay tuned, eh? Next up, just what is an Edgerunner anyway? After hearing the subtitle enough times, you probably become a little curious about what an Edgerunner is. Well, according to the synopsis, an Edgerunner is what they call mercenaries in this world. Another name for these outlaws happens to be, wait for it, you're gonna love this, cyberpunks. Yeah, Edgerunner and cyberpunk actually mean the same thing in universe. Apparently, that means an alternate title for this show would be mercenaries. Not quite the same ring to it, is it? After experiencing personal trauma and with his life on the line, David Hernandez resorts to becoming one such Edgerunner for the sake of survival. Like much of the cyberpunk lore, the name comes from the tabletop RPG series that the franchise is based on. One source book for an expansion is actually called Edgerunners Inc. and is styled as though it were written by the mercenaries in question. So when can you expect to see this show and where can you watch it? You can probably tell from the title of the video that the show is coming out on Netflix, unless you just kinda stumbled onto this by accident having no clue what it was about, in which case, thanks for sticking with us this far into the video. You're much appreciated. What were we talking about? Right, so we know it's on Netflix, but is it available anywhere else? At the moment, it doesn't seem like it. Netflix is the only stated affiliate, and it's gonna be on there in all territories that support the famous subscription service. So it doesn't look like it's going to land on Crunchyroll or Hulu or any other such service anytime soon. The show is slated to come out in September of 2022, just a few months out from the writing of this script, so there's not too long to wait now. Once it's out, I'm sure many reviews and headlines will be popping up about it, and who knows, we may just have more videos on it to come in response. Be sure to keep an eye out for that this fall, because with any luck, Studio Trigger may just have another hit on their hands with this one. Only time will tell. And that's all we've got time for today. Are you looking forward to the show? Excited? Disappointed about the news or lack thereof on the cast? Or maybe you're just hoping this show doesn't take a year's worth of patches to be watchable? Are there any other upcoming shows that you'd like to see us cover in a similar fashion? Let us know down in the comments, and until next time, thanks for watching.